or not go with your gut feeling? In this video lesson, I've invited Jackie from Ask Jackie to talk to us a little bit about going with your gut feeling. So going with your intuition. To begin with, you'll listen to a natural conversation between Jackie and me and listen to us speaking about going with your gut feeling. Now, due to the nature of this conversation, many idioms are being used. Watch the whole video lesson carefully and try to identify the idioms which come up throughout the natural conversation. At the end of the video lesson, together we will analyze 4 idioms which came up throughout our conversation, so that you can understand and use these idioms when speaking in English. Friends, before we hear from Jackie, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments below this video, have you ever been in a situation when you went with your gut feeling and your gut feeling was right? Remember to add in as much detail as you can and leave your answers in the comments below this video. Friends, this video lesson is brought to you thanks to Using English TP members. Have you not heard of Using English TP? Using English TP is our virtual classroom and community connecting English learners from around the world to help them speak English for better life opportunities. Members receive weekly lesson sets focusing on interesting topics which explain grammar, vocabulary, phrases, and a lot of listening and reading practice to make sure that they are using their English and, most importantly, connecting and speaking in English. Join our online classroom and community by heading over to usingenglishTP.com and enrolling and becoming a Using English TP member today. Okay, back on topic, and let's hear from Jackie and hear about her experience going with her gut feeling. Hey Jackie, that idiom, gut feeling, can you tell us a little bit about it, going with your gut feeling?
Sure, Adriana. Okay, so your gut is basically like your belly. And when we have that feeling in our belly, which I also think it kind of connects with our heart in some ways, it's usually something that it's guiding you, it's telling you like you really want to do something, but in your head you can't quite figure out why. It doesn't maybe make sense, it's not a practical choice. So we all have these moments when we're kind of deciding in what I should do, realistically, practically, making the right decisions, basically what people tell us we should do with the checklist. But then we also have our gut feeling, which is also our instinct, which is something that we just feel like we should do and we can't quite understand why.
But you said something interesting like gut. Okay, so gut is our stomach or part of our stomach, but you think that it's connected to our heart, or well, to your heart. You have this feeling. Why?
I think sometimes, well, maybe because they're kind of closer together than where our head is.
For practical reasons.
For practical reasons of proximity. But I also think many times when we feel something in our heart, we also feel it in our stomach as well. Like I know, this is a silly example, but for example, when we get really nervous, I know my son every day when he goes to school, when we just turn on the street towards his school, and he loves his school, but he's always like, oh, my belly hurts. I hate that this happens, because he gets a little bit nervous. But it's anticipation, and it's very attached to your feelings, more so than like your thoughts. So I think our gut feeling comes from our heart, how we feel, which is also related to our thoughts as well, because our thoughts affect our feelings, but they are separate in a lot of ways. So I think our gut, our instinct, and our heart are definitely a little bit more connected than our head in a lot of situations.
But maybe let's get a little bit philosophical here today.
Sure, let's do it.
Have you ever been in a situation when you decided to go with your gut feeling, or maybe at times in your life when, you know, maybe the logical thing to do was that path, you didn't go down that path, you chose to go with your gut feeling?
Absolutely. All the time. And actually, so my decision to move to Brazil, so I now live in Brazil, I'm from Chicago. I moved to Brazil 8 years ago.
And
it was yes, just like you moved to Croatia. it was a decision that, I guess in all practical reasons, was wrong. I was trying to sell my apartment. I rented it out and I tried to sell it during like the worst housing crisis in the US. It was at a time when I was offered tenure, which is like job security for teachers. In Chicago, I had a great life. I had a great job, a great place to live. I had family, friends. There was no like reason to leave. It was very comfortable. But I had this pull. I had this feeling like I just really wanted to do something different. And I knew that coming to Brazil or South America in general, it was not going to be an easier life or a more luxurious life or a more lucrative life. But it was something that I knew I just needed to do. And when I listening to my heart, my gut, my instinct, it was so strong that I'm like, I just have to try it. And worst case scenario, I can go back to Chicago and go back to my old life and things like that. I'm not going to miss out on too much. But since that decision, I've really started listening to my instinct a lot more. When hiring teachers, for example, I go off of the feeling that I get from the teacher rather than just their resume.
Wait, even in a professional, okay, so you do
Yeah.
teach but you go with your gut feeling when you're hiring someone instead of using logic? Why? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are some checklists, like they have to speak English and,
Well, that'd be useful.
Like that. Yeah, there are some checklists, but sometimes it's just a feeling you get from somebody that you just feel like, wow, I think this person is a good fit, or they kind of have a good vibe, a good energy. They seem like they're open to learning, they're trainable, stuff like that, which to me is way more important than their resume or their CV, as you guys would say. But yeah, so I use my instinct, my gut, obviously my head as well, but I think once we start listening to our feelings, our instincts, they're right. They're like always right. If we get a bad feeling about someone, sometimes we can be wrong, but usually it's kind of a sign like, you should be careful with this person or be aware in this situation.
First impression. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to ask you if your decision to move to Croatia, if it was like a realistic one, or what your experience was.
Actually quite similar to yours. I'm actually surprised listening to your answer.
Like, we're the same.
Well, yes, pretty much. Are you just like a replica of me living in Brazil?
The American version.
Actually, I think I'm more Brazilian than you are, Jackie. I have a more Brazilian name.
That's true. You do.
I'm joking. I apologize. But no, really also, I moved to Croatia 7-8 years ago now. And it also wasn't logical. When I moved, completed my Master's of International Business. I'd done my Master's research paper in Dijon. And I remember there was about 20 of us from the university. They were all flying back to Melbourne to defend their final paper. And I was moving to Zagreb. So I had all these suitcases. And I remember the dean of the faculty in Dijon's like, why are you going to Croatia? They're in an economic crisis. So Croatia was really hit by the financial crisis back in 2008, and it is still recovering from this financial crisis. But I also went with my gut feeling, like my parents or my families back in Melbourne didn't have friends. I remember my father's like, but you have no friends there, or you don't know anybody. Like, yeah, I'll make friends. Yeah, I'll meet people. So yeah. I don't think, when I look back at that, like, where was the logic? But it was that gut feeling that you were talking about.
Yeah, and it was a good decision. And even if it didn't last forever, at least for that time, it was pulling you in a direction that you needed to learn certain things or meet certain people at that moment in order to grow, get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, well, actually, I feel that in my life, when I have actually gone with my gut feeling, that maybe sometimes it wasn't the best or most logical decision I've made. but it's been the most useful in the long term because I've been able to learn, develop, adapt myself, but also in the long term learn new skills for which I hope will benefit me in the future.
Yeah. And I also think when we open ourselves a little bit to like how we feel, how we tend to learn more because we're kind of looking for it. If you're just trying to look at the numbers or the statistics or the data, we miss out on a lot of little signs that are there pointing us in a certain direction. So when we're kind of trying to feel it out, see how, observe it with a more open mind, we notice a lot more than if we were just focusing on like the data or the checklist or I need to do this, which is always good to kind of keep an open mind.
You mentioned something before about first impressions. So you used the example of hiring somebody, or so I spoke a little bit about moving to Croatia. You spoke about moving to Brazil. It wasn't the most logical thing. We both went with our gut feeling. But how do you say you have an ideal candidate? You're looking for a teacher at your school. You have two perfect candidates on paper, but one left a negative first impression, but the other one left a fantastic first impression. Do you think that first impression can be changed because that person, they have the right skills, you've seen that they're okay, but that first impression is still bugging you?
Yeah, I do think sometimes, people can give a really great first impression and then you find out later that they're not so great and vice versa. But I do think most of the time, the first impression that we get from people is pretty accurate. Sometimes people can surprise us for the better or for the worse. But I've definitely met people that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, or gave a bad first impression, another expression there, to rub someone the wrong way. And then later I found out, wow, they're fantastic. They're just kind of shy or introverted or something like that. And other people, it can be, you think like, oh, they're amazing, they're so great. And then later you begin to see their true colors and realize like, there's some things a little bit not so positive about this person. But I do think the majority of the time, the first impression, it gives us a good vibe or a bad vibe, and usually it's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm. When people ask me, oh, Adriana, what is a first impression, or how can I leave a good first impression, I always like to tell people smile. Like, people like happy people, and a smile can really, if I'm having a bad day, if I smile at someone, and then I know that their day may be better. But do you have something that you can recommend that somebody does to leave a positive first impression?
Yeah, I think especially like if we're talking about like with interviews, it's always good, to be extra polite, to do your research first, to smile, be very personable. And one thing that I look for, and I know a lot of other people look for, is like someone who is trainable. We don't expect the perfect candidate to walk in the door, but you want someone that you can train, and someone that doesn't necessarily act like, oh, I know it all already. Because to me, I have actually met with candidates who have amazing resumes and they've got everything that you would need. But when I meet the person, I think this person's going to be difficult because they think they know it all already. And if I want them to do things in a little bit different way, or if we try to suggest something, it's going to be hard. And I think when you are new, we need to be humble with our experiences and know that the more we learn, the more we realize like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to learn. I don't know anything. So we have to be very open to learning and willing to learn. I think a willingness to learn is a very good quality for any type of candidate, because people can learn anything if they're willing. But if they come in already thinking like, I already know everything, I'm just going to take over, unless they're looking for somebody with that personality. But I think that tends to close a lot of doors for people. But
So people shouldn't be a Miss or Mrs. Miss or Mr. Know-it-all.
Exactly, exactly. You want to sell yourself. You definitely want to sell yourself. And I think it's great to actually tell stories. So rather than just say, oh, I'm organized, I'm this, I'm that, you can say, you know, for example, last week I was working on this project and this happened, because then you kind of paint a picture of yourself, but in a humble way, not in an arrogant way, like I'm the best, you guys need me type of thing. Some people may disagree with me, but that wouldn't work for me personally.
If you struggle to follow the conversation between Jackie and me, make sure to watch the video lesson again and turn on subtitles so that you can follow the conversation. Now let's move on and look at 4 idioms which came up throughout the natural conversation. The first idiom which came up was going with your gut feeling. Friends, if you go with your gut feeling, it means that you go with your intuition or with your instinct. So you don't think logically about something, but you go with that feeling in your stomach. An example of this could be, Bobby's going to go with his gut feeling and ask Mary out on a date. The second idiom which came up in the conversation was to go down a path or to go down a road. Friends, if you go down a path or a road, it means that you pursue a certain course of action. For example, I'm very happy that Mary stopped smoking. Once you go down that path, it's hard turning back. The third idiom which came up in the conversation was to listen to your heart. Friends, if you listen to your heart, it means that you do what you feel is right. This is similar to going with your gut feeling, because in this situation, if you go with your heart, it means that you follow and trust your instinct. For example, I listened to my heart and I moved away from the big city and I moved to the seaside. The fourth and final idiom is to rub somebody the wrong way. It means that you irritate them. You could be irritating them because of your presence, maybe what you do, or just how you are as a person. You can use the idiom to rub somebody the wrong way to describe that maybe you have irritated somebody or somebody has irritated you. For example, I don't want to hang out with John anymore. He really rubbed me the wrong way last time we met. Friends, remember, in order for you to use these idioms when speaking in English, it's very important to be practicing using these idioms. Try to use these idioms when you speak in English with friends. A special thanks to Jackie for taking the time to record and to join us in this lesson. If you haven't heard of Jackie, head over to Ask Jackie to learn more about Jackie. Friends, remember, this is only one part of the full lesson set Using English TP members have received. To enroll and become a Using English TP member, to get the full lesson set and to get access to our weekly live lessons and weekly group calls, head over to usingenglishTP.com, enroll and join our virtual classroom and private online community. See you there. Bye for now.